Hi, guys, welcome back to the new entrepreneur series of the Growth Mindset podcast, where we will interview interesting entrepreneurs and their unique ideas every week. If you want to be aware of what new and interesting ideas are taking life around you, then this short 15 to 20-minute podcast episode will give you all that information. So, without further ado, let's talk to our entrepreneur of the week. Thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us on the Growth Mindset podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Ab- Absolutely. I'm very excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. So Faisal, for people who might not have heard about you, would you like to, go ahead and give people a quick background about what you're all about and what is Velani Consulting all about?
Yeah, it's really a funny story. So I started off just like almost everybody would start off. You come from an immigrant family, so I'll kind of relate to your background. So I have an older brother who's not even a year older than me. He is like 354 days older than me. He's May 26th. I'm May 14th.
Okay.
And my brother is one of the smartest people that I know, right? He's an electrical engineer. He's great at sales. He was a smart kid in the family. I was a creative sheep of the family. I could tell you this because you're in that field. I wanted to be a Bollywood actor when I grew up. Really, truly did. I thought I was gonna come to India and I was gonna bow the pants off of Karan Johar and Subhash Ghai, and like I had massive dreams of doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I did a lot of stage shows and dance shows, and I was very creative in that field. But if you come from an immigrant family, you better be a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. That those are the three fields that you better fall in. Otherwise, your family kind of looks down on you and says, "What the hell are you doing, wasting your time?"
True.
Right? So I suppressed that side of me for a long, long time. I got through college and I got through high school, graduated, took a job as a banker. Absolutely hated it, but worked my way up. But just internally, everything always felt wrong. Like my compass always felt like it was going in the wrong direction. So finally, I decided after gaining success in that world, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm waking up unhappy every single day. I finally just took the leap of faith. And the way Velani Consulting was born is when I left, I had a few of my friends who had seen me gain success in my professional world. And I had started some side businesses and I had found some success. And I had a very specific formula for how I did it. So they wanted me to help them. And Velani Consulting was essentially born out of that. It was born out of a formula that I had figured out how to achieve growth by being true to yourself and true to your passion. I think you say this a lot, right? Success leaves clues. And I took those clues and I was able to codify that formula. And essentially now Velani Consulting is a company that helps businesses, startups, and mid-sized businesses, and also individuals who are looking to scale in their career or open up a new business, achieve growth through a very specific formula of implementing 5 habits. And that's how Velani Consulting was born.
Interesting. Nice. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering now. You said you were, interested in getting into Bollywood and, working along maybe with Karan Johar and Subhash Ghai. So what
Yeah.
happened? Why did you move away from that and start your business? Do you still have that desire to go back there and maybe wow people?
Yeah, you know what? Maybe one day in life I'll still take a shot at it, but I don't want to completely blame my family because I think people, this is what I found in general, because I've learned this about myself, right? People want to believe that it's out of their control, right? They want to believe that their goals are out of their control because when they believe that, when the goals aren't accomplished, they can blame everybody else but themselves,
True.
right? And as much as I wanted to be an actor, and I truly believe that I would have been, I've done multiple shows and I was really, really good at it. I just didn't have the motivation to get up in the morning, to practice the art, to go to the gym, to continue the dance practices, because I always told myself, well, my family is not going to let me do it, so why try, right? And that was internally something wrong within myself. As great as my passion was to become an actor, apparently the drive wasn't big enough for me to do those consistent habits.
Yeah.
And what I found out is I think I enjoyed being in front of an audience more than just acting in the dancing part. And that's why I do this. Like this pushes me. I get up every morning and I create my content and I talk to people. So I think it was just being in front of a camera that I enjoyed the most. But I think it was 80 or 90% me just not having the motivation, being that lazy kid. and finally breaking out of my shell to say I didn't work hard enough to get there.
And makes sense, right? Sometimes, deep down inside, at least I would say a few years ago, even I had this desire of becoming, going into this industry. But then after
Yeah.
some time, I realized that this is not the only way, right? What I'm
Yeah.
doing today is far more better than what I had envisioned for myself. But along
Yeah.
that path, right? Along that path, now when I wake up, as you said, now I wake up with that motivation. Okay, I'm going to create more content that is
Mhm.
actually going to add value, not just entertain people, but add value to their lives, right? Which makes a lot of
Absolutely.
sense. Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, for people, since you're into consulting, right,
Mhm.
Faisal, for startups and entrepreneurs who want to make sure that their startup succeeds and grows, basically, right?
Mhm.
What can people do? Any practical tips that you have?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that if I could just leave you with one thing is clarity, right? Define your goals. And businesses are exactly like human beings because they're ran by human beings, right? So a business will take on the form of the person who's running it or the leadership that's running it. And again, most people don't want to define their goals because they realize that once they define it, that work is so hard. I feel like most of the population lives in ambiguity, right? They live in this gray area of if I get lucky, great. But if I don't hit my goals, at least I don't have to blame myself. So the one habit that I can tell you is this is what I do with businesses. So I define their goals. I define their why. I define their core values. I define their 10-year targets. I define their 3-year targets, their 1-year targets, and their quarterly initiatives, right? It needs to fit on one piece of paper and it needs to be digestible enough. So clarity will get you your purpose. But if you don't define it, if you don't have a vision of where you want to go, just you're never gonna get there. So that is probably the single most important thing that I can tell them to do right now.
That is, awesome. I love the part where you pulled up that paper and you showed the exact, the steps as to how you do it. I was doing this interview a few weeks ago with Neil Patel, right?
Yes, I saw
So
that.
yeah, while I was interviewing him, he said the same thing, that if you really want your business to succeed, you need to have a plan in
Yeah,
place. And those plans need to be digestible. You need to break it down into yearly, quarterly, weekly, as well as daily goals so that you understand
absolutely.
is that reasonable or not. So it's wonderful to see, that when you have a solid plan, then all you got to do is just, take consistent action towards those and make sure that you're able to go where you want to go.
You
Okay.
know, I'll give you a story that really got me to buy into this. There's an author by the name of Gino Wickman, and he tells the story better than anybody I've ever heard. And he goes, "Look, imagine that there's two teams, and their goal is to cut through a jungle, right? Cut through a straight line through a jungle. And you have one team that is the best there is, right? They have the best jungle cutters, they have great leadership, they're completely motivated, and they start cutting through the jungle, but their leadership team never goes up on top of a tree to see where they're going. So eventually they're just kind of cutting in circles and they lose motivation and they don't accomplish their goals. On the flip side, you have another team that's maybe not as cohesive, their leadership's not that great, they're kind of slow, but they have one habit: they go up every day to see how far did they get. Eventually the inefficient team will beat out the efficient team because they have vision. That's the only difference, right? They have vision, so they'll get to where they want to get to, versus the other team is just working hard and they're just burning themselves out all day long. So it
Right.
is absolutely important to have that.
Hmm. And how did you devise such a plan wherein this is helping entrepreneurs as well as business owners? Have you identified any patterns that has made Fortune 500 companies become successful that startups and mid-sized companies are not doing? Have you seen such pattern like that?
Yeah, I actually call it the GIE method, which essentially is growth is a factor of two things. Growth is innovation and excellence, right? Those are two things in any area of your life will get you massive growth. So innovation in my mind is ideas. Excellence is the actual execution of those ideas, right? And what I've found is the greatest companies in the world actually act like startups, right? They're very agile. They love to experiment. They love to come up with new ideas. But along with new ideas, they are completely fine failing against those ideas. They have no problem by trying to implement, by trying to learn. And it's surprising because a lot of the startups act like Fortune 500 companies that don't want to take chances, even though they have the ability. I give this one story I think is so fascinating. This guy named Greg Linden in Amazon. came up with the recommendation engine, right? Which is Amazon's bread and butter right now. But when he came up with it, a senior marketing vice president told him it's not going to work. It's going to distract clients and he doesn't want it implemented. Greg Linden went against the senior vice president of marketing, tested the idea and got it implemented. And it took Amazon to like new heights.
Yeah.
But Amazon had created this culture of it doesn't matter who says no to your ideas. If you can test it and if you can prove it, you can implement it. Right? One of the biggest companies in the world, even back then, had this agile approach of, hey, we'll act like a startup. We'll work with people. We won't work with bureaucracy. So if you can first innovate, right, come up with brand new ideas, actually have a culture for it, and then have the ability to implement those ideas and be okay with failure, don't punish your people because of failure, I think that is the formula for success. And every Fortune 500 company out there, that's what they do.
Okay. And how about building a culture like that? Like, how can entrepreneurs or business owners build a culture that is, more accepting and listening to what employees have to say? What do you think leaders should do?
I think you can adapt two styles of leadership, right? You can either be a servant leader or you could be a level 5 leader, but you have to empower your people to be able to bring changes to the forefront. Now, I don't know about you, but I've worked in companies where speaking up wasn't allowed, right? You weren't allowed to to point out what was wrong. You were basically a yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am type of person. So again, one of the things that I do is I help the company identify what their core values are. And then I tell the companies, you need to hire based on your core values, right? So when somebody comes to apply for a position, if they don't match these 3 to 7 core values that you have, you shouldn't hire them. Doesn't matter if they're the greatest salesperson in the world, they don't mesh with your thinking, they shouldn't be on board, and vice versa, right? But now if you hire on your core values, that's how you create that culture, because now that person is completely comfortable in that environment and they know that they have the ability to speak up because their challenges are based on what you've told them it's okay, right? As long as you believe in these things, as long as you follow these rules that we have, you can challenge anything and everything. So I think your core values are what develop your culture. Again, if you don't have that culture, it's mainly because you haven't defined your values. You haven't shined a light on it yet.
Exactly. No, I love the part where you mentioned, hiring employees based on core values, right?
Yeah.
And especially the part where, if one can identify a person's core value, people are more inclined to work with those guys and work with those companies in a better way.
Yeah.
Rather than, you hiring somebody who may be a great salesman, but his values do not match with the values that a company has. And end of the day, they're going to realize and they're going to part ways, which can either result in the person leaving the company, which is going to be a hit on you, right? For the company, again, to look for a new guy. Or you can actually hire people based on your core values, which can, build a great relationship, making sure the company succeeds as well as the guy succeeds.
Yeah,
Lovely.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, retention is so much cheaper than acquisition, right? And companies know this philosophy, yet they refuse to believe it or work on it.
Awesome. So I wanted to ask you, as an entrepreneur, right, Faisal, what are some of the challenges that entrepreneurs should prepare themselves for, so that they are sure that if there are some hurdles, some adversity, they're going to come out of it better? Some practical tips that can help entrepreneurs.
First, I think entrepreneurs should realize that in the beginning, you are buying a job, right? You essentially are buying a very, very expensive job for yourself. As long as you are okay realizing that life is not a balancing act. I think there's a big myth out there that you can balance life. That's not true. It doesn't work that way, right? When you start a business, you're going to put in as much time as you possibly can, but you only have 24 hours in the day. So you have to realize that things are going to be taken away from somewhere. I think the biggest problems that entrepreneurs have is they start punishing themselves internally. I didn't get to spend time with my kids. I didn't get to go work out. I didn't eat properly. If those things are truly important to you, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be, then allocate some time for it, right? Decide that, hey, these 2 hours, these 3 hours of my day are going to be spent here. Have discipline, and discipline will lead you to freedom. Once you do that, though, you also need to realize that your job as an entrepreneur is not to keep this job, right? Pass that on to somebody else, hire based on your values, and then hand it off to somebody. And also realize nobody's gonna love your baby as much as you love this baby, right? They're
True.
just not going to. They're not the parent.
Yeah.
So they're not gonna give it the 150% that you were gonna give it. But as long as they're giving 100%, be happy with that. Take that and continue to grow, continue to build. Entrepreneurs have such a hard time letting go of their work because they feel like nobody's doing it as good as
Yeah.
them. And it's true, nobody will do it as good as you. But you're never gonna grow if you're a one-man team and you're the marketer, you're the salesperson, you're the content creator, and you're the janitor, right? You're never gonna grow that way. So
True.
let some of the stuff go.
Okay. And I see there are some books right behind you,
Yeah.
right, on your shelf. Now, if I could ask you, let's say if you could suggest or recommend two books that could help entrepreneurs become a better version of themselves, help them build a business as well. It could be one personal self-help book and the other one for business or how to make a business or a startup grow. What those
Right.
two books are going to be?
So my favorite one I don't have here. I don't know why. I should put it back on there. I
Mhm.
usually lend it out to people to read sometimes, but it is Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
I love that book.
That Yeah, that has got it's the fun thing is it's such a small read. It's not a big massive book,
Yeah.
but again, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And that book has truly changed my life because until I realized what the golden circle was, I was a what,
Hmm.
how, why person. I wouldn't even get to why. I was a what, how person. And when I flipped it, when I decided to start with why and everything, it has changed my life absolutely, and my business. So if your audience is listening, if they have not read Start With Why, that has to be the number one book that I would recommend to anybody and everybody out there, even on a personal side, right?
Hmm.
I would recommend that. My second favorite one is actually back here. It's called Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Hmm.
Let me see if I can get it. This one
Yep.
right here.
Yep.
I think this book essentially covers almost everything that you need to know about people and leadership, right?
Hmm.
It tells you what a level 5 leader is. It tells you why everybody on the team needs to be rowing in the same direction. It tells you the importance of human capital, but instead of seeing them as an asset, you see them as a person of value.
Hmm.
Um, and some of the greatest companies, right? Southwest Airlines in the United States, they've built their entire model of company. Our employees are number one, our customers are number two, and the company is number three. And most companies don't have that model. Their number one, at least they say, is customer,
Yeah.
and then they go to company, and then they go to employee. But they don't realize the company never deals with the customer. The employee is the one who deals with the customer. So if you
Yeah.
keep the employee happy, eventually the customers will be happy, and if the customer is happy, the company will make money.
True.
So that's what this book talks about in great detail. So definitely the second one that I would recommend is Good to Great.
Okay, awesome. There are two questions. These are two questions that basically I ask almost all the guests on my podcast, right? Uh,
Mhm.
the first one being you understand the importance of growth and having the growth mindset, wherein
Yeah.
you are open to possibilities, you're asking better questions to yourself, and you're growing on a regular basis. Now, if I had to ask you, what has been your recipe to develop the growth mindset, to build that resilience? What recommendations would you give? Any practical tips that you have?
Yeah, I think consistency, right?
Hmm.
Consistency in every part of your life. So again, if I talk about the formula, growth equals innovation plus excellence, um, if you break down that formula even more, technically growth is 20% innovation, 80% excellence.
Hmm.
So there's two examples that I love to give. If you say you were going to learn to ride a bike, that idea of riding the bike, that's innovation, right? And
Hmm.
that idea is great. People are very good at coming up with ideas. We do it every New Year's Eve, right? We come up with these great ideas for our lives and how we're going to change everything. Excellence is the hard part. Consistency. So when you start to ride the bike, you realize it's not as easy as I thought. You're going to fall, you're going to get bruised, you're going to get scraped. And it's that person who decides to get back on the bike, not go back and come up with another great idea, who decides, hey, I'm going to get back on this bike over and over again, is the one who'll eventually learn it. And that's also the person that will continue to do it over and over again. And then it'll become a habit, it'll become muscle memory where your body
Yeah.
doesn't even know a time that you didn't know how to ride this bike.
True.
So same thing with businesses, right? Some ideas, when you look from the outside in, they look so hard. But the only difference between you learning it and the other person doing it is they've just got hours of consistency behind it and they didn't give up.
Hmm.
So that's what I would recommend is come up with a great idea, but once you feel it in your gut, stop. Work on the idea. Don't be a bandwagon jumper. Don't come up with another shiny object. Stick to it and you will find success in it.
Awesome. And it's all about adapting, right? At the same time, just making sure that you are continuously working on it, improvising, and then making sure you are consistent, as you said. That will definitely help you grow personally as well as grow your business.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, especially in the environment that we live in, right? Like earlier you talked about how you wanted to be an actor and then you
Hmm.
realized this is what you wanted. If you look back 10 years ago, you wouldn't have had this opportunity. I wouldn't have had this opportunity. We now live in a world where technology has made David on the same level field as Goliath, right?
Correct.
You can go against the big shots and you can outdo them. You can compete with them because you're more agile, you have more time, you're more flexible, and you now have almost the same type of technology or comparable as them. So take advantage of that. This time, I don't know if it'll ever come back because it's the first time where competition is low,
Yeah.
but opportunities are high. So people who take advantage of this right now are the ones that are going to succeed in the future.
Yeah. There is one very important question that just, came into my mind now. You understand that during this time, this COVID time, right? Companies are struggling, startups are struggling, businesses are struggling. But what can people do to take advantage of this time that we're talking about? Basically, the startups and, let's say, mid-sized companies. Anything that they can do?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll give you two answers. Specifically for organizations, I actually just gave a seminar on this on digital transformation.
Mm-hmm.
There's companies who've been avoiding technology within their business forever now. Right? They still want to work off of Excel spreadsheets. They still want to pick up the phone to talk to their clients. COVID has brought the opportunity of you going online. And if you don't do it right now, if your company doesn't adapt to digital transformation, you're going to be left behind,
Yep.
right? So this is the time to actually break down your current model and see where you can implement technology. And I think companies, especially employees, have a hard time with this because they believe that if technology comes, they go. And that's not true. When technology comes into play, what technology is doing is it's taking care of these push button activities that's not
True.
providing you any value. And you can take your employees now and move them over to strategy. Right? One of the things that Jim talks about in his book, it's a quote that I love. Working on issues will make you good, but working on opportunities will make you great.
Hmm.
And a lot of companies just don't have the manpower to work on opportunities because they're always trying to fix issues.
Issues.
Right. So
Awesome.
use technology as a medium, as an enabler to help take care of your issues.
Hmm.
Personally, do this, right? Do what you and I are doing. Take anything that's been a passion of yours that
True.
you haven't had time to do, right? So if you want to podcast. If you want to learn to play basketball, go play basketball. If you wanted to be an actor, you have all the time in the world. Go practice your art, right? People have been complaining about a lack of time forever. You have that now. So
Yeah.
utilize it. Again, another quote that I really like, Winston Churchill said that a good crisis is a crisis is a good opportunity that you shouldn't waste, or something along that line,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this pandemic has given me the opportunity to spend more time with my kids that I absolutely love, and it's given me the opportunity to connect with people like you that would have never happened,
True.
right?
True.
So find a passion and work on it.
Exactly. And I think this is very important at times like this where, there is a lot of negativity around. You guys, most people are sitting at home. They, basically when you have an environment, an office environment, and when you come back home, you want to chill, right? But that's not the possibility now. Now you got to work, and your bedroom or your room where you used to chill is your
Yeah.
office, right? So it's very important that you actually get out of the bed, work, develop some passion, work on your passions to make sure you're consistent and positive.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's where discipline comes in too, right? Like you need to make sure, because your home environment and your work environment is just bleeding into one another,
Yeah.
you need to draw some clear defined lines to say, I'm spending time with my kids. I'm spending time with my wife. I'm going for a walk. I'm dedicating this hour to my passion, right? Your
Correct.
quad two activities that Stephen Covey breaks down, figure those out and you'll find enormous success if you
Yeah.
work life that way.
Exactly. All right. So one last question. This is something that I ask again all my guests, and
Right.
this is more like a philosophical question. So I
Mhm.
want you to imagine, let's say, 30, 40 years from now, like you have kids, and your kids are growing up, and it's the last day on your plan for you, right?
Uh-huh.
You've done amazing stuff. You've achieved all your dreams, goals, maybe worked in 2 or 3 movies, danced and stuff like that.
Right.
But it's time for you to give some two philosophical suggestions or advice to your kids to live a happy, fulfilling life.
Mhm.
What those two advice are going to be?
Wow. Okay. So I do this with my clients. I tell them think that they've passed away and it's their funeral. And what is it that you want people to say? So
Interesting.
I'll tell you this.
Mm-hmm.
My why right here. I want to read it out to you real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So my one liner is I want to become legendary by making the world a better place. Like that is my why. That is what gets me out of bed. So the one thing that I would tell my kids is find a purpose in life that puts a smile on your face, right? At any point in time, doesn't matter how bad of a day you're having, if you read that one line, it automatically puts a smile on your face because you know that your heart is happy doing that. And once you figure it out, block out the world, block out any noise, just go for it, right? You don't have to defend your nose to anybody. Just go work on that goal. And doesn't matter if you succeed or not, at least at the end of the day, you stepped up to the bat and you took a swing.
Yeah.
But you're not one of those people who didn't.
Yeah.
The second advice that I would give them, that I actually do give them right now, is accept failure, love failure, right? Just look for failure. When I grew up, failure was not something that was accepted. It was something that was looked down upon. But it's such a simple idea to understand. The only way to find success is anything is a bunch of failures put together,
True.
right? Again, you get on the bike, you fall, you failed, you get up, you fall, you fail, you get up, you fall, you fail. Finally, you end up succeeding, but that success was built on a ton of different failures. So why are we running away from it? Accept failures, be happy with failures, look for failures, get them out of the way because they have to be there, and then go find your success. So
Makes sense.
that's probably two things I'll leave them with.
Awesome. Perfect. So thank you so much, Faisal, for taking your time out and
Yeah.
joining us on the Growth Mindset podcast. The value that you've added by sharing your advices as to how startups can, strategize around their business and what people can do to make sure their company grows, both innovation and excellence. Right. So thank you so much for sharing that.
No, absolutely. I'm very happy to be here. Anytime I get to relay my message to an audience, especially like-minded people, again, it just fits into my why. So I appreciate the opportunity and thank you for having me.
My pleasure, Faisal. This brings us to the end of this episode and hope you at least had one takeaway from this interview. If you have any questions or want to talk to me personally, you can find me at www.silawatirshad.com. See you soon.